My name is Walter Feiger. I was born in Krakow, Poland. I am a Holocaust survivor. My childhood in Poland was very nice. I was born to a privileged family. My father was a chemist. We had a small factory in the city of Katowice. Our product was mostly household cleaning products. It was a beautiful city. The schools that I went to were side by side, one for Jews and one for Gentiles. And we used to have fights every time there were there were breaks between classes. But I never felt really anti-Semitism. It was just kids playing and fighting. Well, that all finished on September 1st, when the Nazis declared war on Poland. Being that our city was very close to the German border, we were the first one to see the Germans come in, the Wehrmacht. We were not allowed to leave there. We had to leave and move into a smaller town where they created a ghetto. They had Jewish guards that were in charge. You couldn't get out unless you had a document from the German. We were together for a while, and that was wonderful. And then they came out with a degree. The oldest son in the family had to go and volunteer to work to Germany. One day coming back from work, we were told that we need to come to the local gymnasium. There's going to be some briefing that we all have to participate. So I showed up, and while I was there, I was told to undress. I stood in front of a German doctor who looked me over. I was only 3 months short of 15. You had to be 17 to be sent to Germany. But he told the German official the German official told me he's only 15, but the doctor said, yeah, but he's healthy, he can go. And the next thing, we were marched out from the gymnasium with SS officer in front and in the back, and were sent straight. We were going to the railroad station. As they took us, taking us towards the railroad station, she gave me a small suitcase with clothing and German money. And I went to talk to a capo. A capo was a supervisor over the rest of us. And I told him, I have German money. I'll give you all my money if you send me to the camp where my brother is, in Sakrow. After 3 weeks in camp, my destination was Sakrow. I still remember the surprise of my brother's face, seeing his kid brother come into camp. But for me, my brother was a salvation. He was there already a year. He was my mentor. He told me what to do and what not to do, how to stay out of being beaten up and so forth. The first procedure, they take all your personal belonging away once you got into camp, including pictures. And we had a yellow star on the breast. We also had to put the yellow star on my back. And I had to be cut out and then sewed over. And then we had to go into a place called Enlausung. You had to undress, give up all your clothing, and they sprayed you with a chemical to make sure that you don't have any lice. The work was very hard. We got a half a pound of bread in the morning and a cup of imitation coffee. When we came back from work, we got a bowl of mostly cabbage soup or potato peels. Only once on Hitler's birthday, we would get chowder soup. That was something special. The barracks were 60 people. The bed were bunks, one on top, one on the bottom. You slept on straw on straw bags. They made sort of an imitation mattresses. Sometimes they would come in middle of the night inspecting, and if they found straw underneath you bunker, you got 50 lashes. A lot of people, because of malnutrition, started to have all kinds of diseases, and before you know it, your neighbor was dead when you woke up in the morning. And I was in that camp for about a year, and then we got transferred to a larger camp called Markstadt. After being in that camp for 2 years, the rumors got when we came home that we're going to be all transferred to a concentration camp. But I never been in a concentration camp at the time. We had to undress the middle of the place, and there was a guy with a cane. He had the impairments in walking. We used to call him the loomer in Yiddish, for somebody that has impairment. And he with the cane would say, you go to the left or you go to the right. Going to the right, we were lucky with my brother. We meant we're going to go to the concentration camp. The ones that were put to the left were going to Auschwitz, and they were going to the ovens. Concentration camp was different. It was multinational. There were Russians, there were French, there were Italian, there were gypsies, there were Jehovah's Witnesses, there were priests, but the hierarchy were Germans. The commandant was a communist. His assistant was a butcher that he killed somebody with an axe. They were our overseers. There was a lot of sickness going on, and there was no help. If you went to the infirmary, which they had an infirmary, the SS would make a surprise visit and will take you to Auschwitz. So I would never go in there. I once had an upset on my bottom of my foot. I cut it open with my glass and got all the pus out, but I would not go in there because if I knew if I go in there, I'll never come out. In the morning when we had to line up to see if everybody was present, they took all the dead bodies and they piled them up one on top of the other. At one time there were 2 guys missing, and we stayed there in the cold. People were freezing. We stood there for hours and wouldn't dismiss us. Finally, they did dismiss us and we went to work. When we came back, there were 2 bodies hanging upside down, bloody faces, and they took me out and I had to kiss their faces. I never forgot that. One day they decided to liquidate the camp, and the Jews, just the Jews, were taken on what they called the Dead March. It was winter time. It was very cold. We had some didn't have shoes. If you couldn't follow up, you got shot. The guards were Ukrainians. They were the Ukrainians SS. They didn't speak a word German, but they hated Jews with a passion. We slept in horse stalls. And horse stalls, they had those big lice. We used to call them the Crusaders. They had a cross on their back, and they infected people with typhus. And my brother was one of them that got infected with typhus 6 weeks before the liberation. He died in my arms. I didn't want to live after that. One day I woke up and the guards were gone. And I walked out and a company of Polish soldiers walked in. They interviewed us. They gave us a piece of paper stating that we were prisoners of war and go home. Well, I couldn't go home. I was nothing but skin and bones. As I walked out in the street, there was a German man, and he started talking to me, and he invited me to his house. He took care of me, his family, for 6 months. I found out that nobody in my family survived. Uncles, aunts, they all gone. There I found out that in the neighboring town there's a small group of young Jewish men and women. And I went to visit them, and turned out that they were Zionists getting ready to go to Palestine. I collected stamps as a child. I knew of Palestine, but my family were not Zionists. I got indoctrinated, and I felt that, yes, if by biblical right, this is our land, this is where I need to go, this is where I need to live. The Haganah, which were the former soldiers in the Israeli brigade that fought in Italy, they were in charge of transferring us from a Russian zone to the American zone to Landsberg. In Landsberg, I was in a DP camp, displaced people camp. There you had nutrition, you had medical help, clothing, everything was given to us. It was wonderful. And then I was in a group called Kibbutz Banativ. And after 6 months, we were ready to go to Palestine with the leadership of the Haganah. First, we went to Czechoslovakia, where we were dancing the hora. We had a great reception. We spent a day or two over there, and then to France. We were in Marseille, right on the border of the ocean, a camp of 600 young Jewish people. After waiting a while, a boat came. It was a fisherman boat capable of having 50 people. There were 600 of us, and we all went on that boat. They ripped up the inside of the boat, and we slided in like sardines. In the daytime, you couldn't get out on deck because the English were wise to what's going on, and they were patrolling the ocean, the Mediterranean. Instead, I joined the Haganah, and that was my beginning with the Israeli underground. After 6 months, in Cyprus being the first one there, I got an affidavit to go to Palestine. So they gave me a test. They gave me Suk Gimel, beginner craftsman. And I worked for 1 week, and the day's pay was £1.50. With a half a pound, I could have enough to live. I said, I'm going to become rich here. Well, after a week, the same guy from the Histadrut came. He said, listen, your boss is very happy with your work, but we have family men. They need the job more than you. But don't worry about it. We will give you another job. They came, they asked, we need a volunteer to go to learn to become a demolition sergeant. And I went volunteer. It doesn't mean that you become a sergeant. If you do well. Evidently, I did well, and I became a sergeant. Our company was involved in the fight in Mishmar Yarden, which was a heavy fight. We lost casualties. But the bigger one was Malkiya. Our company was the first one. We were troubleshooters. Today it's called the Golanis. Then it was called Gdud Rishon Yehidat Pshita Achadesrei. And we had jeeps with the machine gun mounted. That's what we had. And wherever there were trouble, they would send us. And so we conquered the village of Malkiya on the Golan Heights. But after being there 1 week, a half a dozen tanks came from Syria down. All we had is 2 bazookas. Now, to take care of a tank with a bazooka is suicide, because you have to be very close and the machine gun will just get you. But we did take care of 2 of them. But the captain came to me and said, Zeev, you have to take care of the bridge, because otherwise we are all finished. I had 2 helpers, and I destroyed the bridge. By destroying the bridge, I was promoted to lieutenant. At night, we were able to evacuate down the mountains. There were 120 of us getting up. 37 survived. That was the bloodiest fight I was in, and lost so many good friends. I never go back to Israel. It was too hard. I decided after being 2.5 years in the army, I got I was I was transferred to the Haifa Police Department, where I got demoted to a sergeant. I don't know why, but anyway, my job was to organize a anti-terrorist group, and we would have uh, Arabs that would tell us where crossings gonna be, and we would ambush them. After 3 years, I asked for a permission to go to France. I wanted to go to France. I knew I had one surviving uncle because I met people from Paris and France and Lille where he was stationed. They told me he was in the French army, got demobilized, and was taken to Auschwitz and survived. And that's the only person. He was my mother's brother. I got furloughed for 3 months. I owned my papers to go, and he found me in 48 in Israel. A happy reunion, and I asked him, what should I do now? And he told me every young man should spend some time in France. That was good advice. I lived in Paris for 6 years. I loved Paris. I was living right next to the Moulin Rouge. I used to spend my weekends there. That's where Toulouse-Lautrec used to paint all the dancers. And he used to like a wine called Pommard. And I would drink the same thing. I used to say, if it's good for Toulouse-Lautrec, it's good for Walter. Then I met a young woman. Thanks to President Eisenhower, I was considered a Polish political refugee. And within 3 months, I married this young lady. And both of us were shipped from Brussels, Belgium, in a super constellation. Finally, we got to LaGuardia on Columbus Day, 1956. And there was a parade, and I told my young bride, you see, that's for us. And she bought it. I had a contract in Passaic, New Jersey, in a sport factory, sport jackets, where I used to be in the needle business in Paris, and I was a cutter there, and so being a cutter there. But I didn't like working there because the Polacks spoke Polish, the Italians spoke Italian, the Jews spoke Yiddish. I came to America to be an American, but I slowly got better jobs because I was a hard worker. 12 years later, I was the store manager. And then a friend of mine told me, why don't you come on vacation to Tucson? I had a cousin who said, Tucson, Arizona? What, you going to join the Air Force? There's nothing there. Well, I was lucky to sell. I have a 2-family house. I was lucky to sell it at a good price. I paid off all the debts. And I came to Tucson, Arizona with $25,000 cash. I was a rich man. I joined the Southern Arizona Bank, which that is today Wells Fargo. They used to wine and dine me because I invested my money there. Well, I joined anti-Israel. I figured I'd be among Jews. I'll find out what I should do. The cantor's wife was a real estate woman. So she took me under her arms and said, buy an apartment complex. There is no apartments to have in Tucson. So I bought a 12 units apartment complex with a pool, roses of each. There's 12 2 units, 2 1 units. The first 2 years were wonderful because people would beg me for leases. After that, a good thing don't stay forever. Builders from Chicago, builders from LA started coming into Tucson, build the 600-unit buildings, and I would have a big vacancy factor. I went to work for Fry's, and I managed to grow the liquor stores. After 4 years, I sold my apartments at a loss, but I wanted out. and I bought a liquor store, which is still today in business, in Monterey Shopping Center, corner Will Mountain Speedway. In addition to that, my sad story is my first wife, my French wife, died of cancer on Christmas Day 1978. My beautiful daughter died of cancer at the age of 47. I have 2 sons, but I remarried after being a widower for 5 years. My next wife I met at the Tucson Beach soda with the dance at one of the hotels that they had. And she started kissing me while I was dancing. And I told her, you know, I'm Jewish. She says, I love Jewish people. And I think to myself, yeah, I heard that before. But she really did love Jewish people. She was a young divorcee and just finished law school 3 months ago. We had a short courtship for 11 years. She wanted to know that she got the right guy this time. After 11 years we married. We had another 13 years. She was a wonderful woman. I have 2 stepdaughters. I'll show you the pictures of it. She was the first mother-daughter lawyers in the state of Arizona. And my stepdaughters take good care of me. But I'm happy being in America. I love America. I love America. I wanted to be a cowboy, but I'm too short, so I couldn't get up on a horse. And life is wonderful. There's nothing like it. Even though of my tragedy, I am a very positive person. I have no room for negativity in life. Maybe that's how I got to be 92. I'm still going strong.